You ever see a comedian step on stage and suddenly the other comics stop talking? That's Tony Hinchcliffe. He's not loud, and he's not there to make friends. He just knows where it hurts and continues to push boundaries.
Hey, Tom. This is great. Nice shoes. Did you win those in the divorce?
He started out broke in Ohio, roasting kids on the school bus. Then he wrote jokes for A-List Roast, started a podcast where comics get publicly shredded, and somewhere along the way pissed off half the internet. This is how Tony went from working the door at the Comedy Store to becoming the most feared and fired up man in stand-up. Tony Hinchcliffe was born on June 8, 1984 in Youngstown, Ohio, a city defined by its slow decline. When Tony was growing up, jobs had disappeared, violence had surged, and ambition felt like a luxury few could afford. Tony was raised by a single mother. He never even met his father, and growing up in that kind of uncertainty taught him things school never could. There were no safety nets. You had to be quick, especially with your words.
I don't know, go for hikes, hang out with friends. This is
Wait,
so
did you really
fucking
just start
awkward.
with hikes? Are you kidding me?
For Tony, humor didn't come from joy, it came from pressure. He learned to roast like other kids learned how to throw a punch. He got hit on the first day of school for a joke he cracked on the bus, and instead of backing down, he sharpened the blade. Sarcasm became his edge. That raw, fearless wit was his way of staying one step ahead. By high school, he had a reputation for being dangerously funny. Teachers dreaded calling on him. He turned attention into a stage, but back then, stand-up comedy felt as far away as Hollywood itself.
My friends, back when I graduated from high school, were obsessed with Dane Cook, and I walked in one day and they're dying of laughter when he's moving around. It was the vicious circle, and he's walking and swinging his arms. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to do that, but I want to do it without any of that movement. I want it to be just the words.
There were no comedy clubs in Youngstown, no open mics, just a kid who couldn't stop firing off lines and a feeling that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't built to stay in that town. So in his early 20s, Tony packed his entire life into a car and drove to Los Angeles. He had no connections, no plan B, and just one thought repeating in his head: you don't belong here anymore. Tony moved to Los Angeles in 2007, where he found work at the Comedy Store, one of the most iconic comedy venues in the country.
You know what? I'm not sure whether you said Jews or juice, but I'm going to keep it that way.
His job wasn't on stage. It was answering phones, checking IDs, cleaning up after shows, whatever needed doing. Most people treated it like a survival job. For Tony, that was training. Every night he stayed late to watch the best comics in the world perform. He took mental notes on how they built tension, handled silence, and responded when a joke didn't land. He watched people succeed. He also watched them fail. He started slipping into open mics when someone didn't show up. Sometimes a manager would toss him 5 minutes just to fill dead space. Other times he begged for it because he knew he had to get started. His first sets weren't pretty, but the staff knew he was funny, and little by little, word got around. Comics who'd seen him work in the door started hanging back to watch his set. When he finally got some real stage time, it came in the worst slots, after midnight with restless crowds and tired comics. But he took every opportunity seriously. His material was harsh and direct, and it often made people feel uncomfortable. Some audiences didn't respond, others did. Either way, he kept going. In the background, he kept writing, observing, making small adjustments. While other comics focused on getting laughs, Tony focused on learning how to hold a room. The work paid off. Over time, his name started to come up. Tony was always writing. Notebooks filled with half-finished lines, rewrites, observations. Every night at the Comedy Store gave him new material, watching comics rise, bomb, recover, or fall apart. That discipline soon opened up a new path, working behind the scenes on Comedy Central's famous roast specials. The roast might have looked like lighthearted TV, but inside the writer's room, they were tense and cutthroat. Every joke had to be sharper than the last, and nobody wanted to be the one who missed. That's where Tony started building a reputation. He had a way of finding the exact thing that made someone uncomfortable and building a joke around it with just enough restraint to make it sting harder. Tony once said, "I don't write jokes to protect people's feelings," and you could feel that. During the Ann Coulter and Martha Stewart roast, some of the lines people couldn't stop talking about came from him. You didn't always know it in the moment, but those were his fingerprints. Clean, brutal, and right on target. He knew exactly how far to push without losing the room. Jeff Ross recognized Tony's talent early. He brought him closer, gave him more writing opportunities, and eventually encouraged him to step in front of the camera himself. That led to Roast Battle, where Tony went from writer to performer. This was a turning point. His voice was no longer behind the curtain. By 2013, Tony had made a name for himself in writers' rooms and backstage corridors. He had experience, connections, and respect from some of the biggest names in comedy. But he wanted something that couldn't be taken away, a show that was his from the ground up. That idea turned into Kill Tony. The idea was raw. Pull a random name from a bucket, give him 1 minute on stage, and then critique the set live. Comics had to sink or swim in front of a live crowd and a panel of veterans ready to break them down. Kill Tony wasn't about seeing who could handle the pressure. Tony thought 1 raw minute on stage told you more than a polished set ever could. If someone had something, he saw it. When he gave you a shot, it counted. The show started in a small upstairs room at the Comedy Store. Word spread fast, and by 2021, Tony had moved it to Austin, right as the comedy scene shifted. There, Kill Tony became a new kind of institution, half show, half proving ground. By 2016, Tony built a name for himself. He'd written for The Roast, held his name on stage, and was running Kill Tony every week. But he wanted more, so he came to Netflix with a different idea. One straight-through performance in front of a real crowd. That became One Shot. It was simple. 1 mic, 1 camera, and Tony doing what he does best, pushing the room with dark, tightly written jokes. He talked about race, class, identity, and all the things most comics tiptoe around.
This is gonna be a hit, and just started writing.
One Shot wasn't exactly made to trend or chase attention spans. It was for people who'd actually listen. After that, he released Making Friends on YouTube. It was a bit looser, but the same voice, bold, confrontational, completely his. Then in 2025, he dropped Kill or Be Killed, a second Netflix special that went even harder. For a while, it felt like he was finally getting everything on his terms. Then the video came out. In May 2021, Tony was performing at a live show in Austin. He went up right after Ping Dang, an Asian American comic who had just finished his set. He opened with a series of jokes that played off Ping's ethnicity, and they weren't subtle. The crowd didn't seem sure how to react, but someone in the audience was filming. That clip, less than a minute long, ended up online the next day. It showed Tony mocking Ping with racially charged language and accents. It spread fast. Twitter, Reddit, comedy blogs, everywhere. Accusations of racism followed almost instantly. Tony was dropped by his agency, bookings disappeared, several comedy clubs cut ties publicly. For years, he'd built momentum as a comic who pushed boundaries, but now the question wasn't about his timing or writing. It was whether he'd crossed a line he couldn't walk back from. What looked like a steady climb suddenly became something else entirely. But unlike many public figures who scramble to explain themselves, Tony didn't offer a heartfelt apology. He didn't go on a PR tour. For a while, he said nothing at all. When he did return, it wasn't with a statement. It was with more Kill Tony. More sets, more shows, same voice, same edge. But for Tony, it was something else entirely. This was the only way he knew how to move forward. He spent his entire life saying what others were too afraid to say. Now, he was being tested on whether he meant it. Most would have taken a break, but over the next few years, Tony walked straight into the fire. In 2024, Tony made headlines again, this time by doing a surprise guest set at a Trump rally in Texas. No explanation, no press run. He just walked on stage and did what he does. The internet exploded. Was he making a statement? Was it a calculated move? No one knew. Some fans saw it as trolling, others saw it as selling out. What it definitely did was push him further outside the mainstream and deeper into cult status. For some people, that silence made it worse. They wanted an answer, something to categorize him with. Tony kept it all on stage where it had always been. Love him or hate him, he hasn't disappeared. In fact, he's doubled down, and what emerged from the chaos was something even more lasting. Tony Hinchcliffe never played it safe. He built a career saying what most comics are too scared to say and took the hits that came with it. You don't have to agree with him. You don't even have to like his jokes. But if you think comedy should be honest, even when it stings, then Tony was never the problem. If you want more videos like this, raw, complicated, and real, give this one a like and subscribe to our channel. We've got a lot more to say. See you next time.